Jimmy, for me, when I look at this matchups or Dangerman, I'm looking at MMA versus Alvarez and Hector Herrera. I don't know if they'll start Romo in the middle. Wiso, would love your take on who you think will be in that spot. But when I think about the spine of the U.S. team, and I know we're talking about Mexico right now, that's where I'm the most secure at the moment. Yeah, we got good attackers, and we've seen that we have a number of players we can rotate, whether Pulisic's on the field or not. But in terms of where we need to start winning and dominating consistently is in the midfield against Mexico, because Mexico, just like a lot of CONCACAF opponents, are so good at moving the ball in and out the other side that they get you chasing, right? And now the team has to run 40, 50 yards to get back into position. And the more we can start to win up the spine of the team, I think the better we can be, not just in this game in the matchup against Mexico, but in the future as well, to actually have a dominant midfield. And I don't think the U.S. has ever really had a midfield against Mexico that dominates. We've had good midfields. We've had teams that can match up, but we need to start dominating that midfield, because if you keep Mexico to one side, you can frustrate them a little bit. They start to hit long diagonals or attempt a little more direct play. And that's where I think we need to win. The other thing, by the way, is just, I love Hector Moreno. Wiso, is he in your team for this game? Because he's so I think he's a calming presence for the teams. Other people were criticizing me for that. Obviously, he lacks the speed and transition, and makes the team a little bit more vulnerable. When I see him on the ball and I see the team around him, they just seem to have this confident figure who's been around it, who's seen it, not going to be fazed by the challenge. But that's another matchup that I see him having to line up against Ricardo Pepi in that match, and I like that matchup.
What I'll say very quickly, Wiso, is with regard to speed and Hector Moreno, I got to give a shout out to El Emperador Claudio Suarez, who's one of my favorite defenders to ever play in CONCACAF, has more caps for the Mexican national team than anybody else. And he was slow, but he made up for it with his positioning and his anticipation and his ability to see things 3, 4, 5, 6 steps ahead, and then was so calm. And I think that is a trademark that Mexico, for me, have consistently built those types of players. It's okay.
Rafa Marquez. I never saw him sprint one time, and he was unbelievable.
Yeah,
right.
Claudio Suarez, you said it. He still looks the same as he did in '94. I was with him last week, and the guy does not age. He's been that age since the '90s. So, but it's true. Yes, you're going to have defenders that might not sprint a lot. And but in those one-on-ones with those fast players is where we kind of go, Alphonso Davies going through our defense. It's Alphonso Davies, right? Right. But that's where you kind of go, and you have players like Pulisic who could do that. You have great players that are fast, and that's the worry on our side. As far as experience, I think you need to have it there. I wouldn't put a young guy in this game. This is the most important game you're going to play before the World Cup, as far as venues is. With a great atmosphere that's against you for once in the U.S. for a long time, right? And you don't want to put somebody that's not used to it. We saw other team. I mean, we saw Gregg what happened in Panama, right? They're not used to these games when you're putting someone that's not ready. So I don't see Heath Romo going in the start. I still think Herrera, Guardado, Edson, which is the same three that were in the Nations League, right? Up front, That's old,
bro.
This is where we kind of go, all right, I want to see Raul Jimenez against this U.S. team, which finally we will have. Raul, Chucky Lozano, which has been playing great in qualifiers, and then Tecatito, who fans have been like, all right, it's not the same Tecatito, but Tecatito does really well against the U.S., right? Against the
can you trust
defenders.
that? I mean, the guy's barely playing at his club right now, right? It's true. Had like 15 minutes or something like that.
He's from what they tell me, I think he's done. He wants to be out of there, and he's not giving it. I think he's going to come back and do his all. And what Tecatito does, and again, going back to the Nations League, that very first goal, going back to the friendly, Tecatito likes to put on a show against the U.S., and we haven't had that type of player in a long time. So those three will be the guys up top. See how they do.
For me, with regard to key matchups, I think Raul Jimenez versus our two young center backs, Miles Robinson and most likely Chris Richards, is going to be very pivotal. I slightly disagree with you, Heath, about having to dominate the midfield. I think if we can just nullify the midfield, it puts us in a good spot to try to win other battles on the field. And that ultimately, and I mentioned it before, it comes down to set pieces. We're very good on set pieces against Mexico. That's what got us back into the Nations League final to take it into extra time. That's what helped us get the winner in Las Vegas in the Gold Cup final. And I think that there's some insecurity there from Mexico going, yeah, we could work on this for 3 weeks straight, but these guys are just better at set pieces than us. And so they really have to limit where they're fouling in some ways. So maybe that speed and where Christian Pulisic could really come in and be super effective because he's so good in 1v1 situations and drawing fouls. I don't think Pulisic's going to start this one. I'd be really surprised if he did. And if he does, maybe he only gets 45 minutes. I think you have to be thoughtful about where he is coming back from his injury. But
I think you start him. I think you start him too.
Yeah.
I think you got to start him now only because of the fact that I think it's easier to manage the minutes from a start of a game, I think, than throw him into a really tough scenario where he doesn't get the minutes. And we're seeing this more and more where you can do a halftime sub, you can make changes at different times. It's not like I feel like the game is oddly changing because the nature of the game has changed, and obviously at the club level with 5 subs and things like that, everything's different now. But I think you got to start him. And what I like about him, and why I like that matchup against Moreno, is now you have a target striker in Ricardo Pepi who's good at hold up play, solid at hold up play, but also solid at making the game predictable for the players that are feeding him, right? Play the ball, get it back, and move and spin off into spaces. And I think that's where the U.S. is starting to have a little bit more of a dynamic attack, as somebody at that striker position, which we haven't had in a while, that makes the game predictable for the attackers around them. Feed the ball in, get the ball back, spin out, spin off. And it's not so much of this constant needing 3-4 touches to get the ball under control and continue the attack. And so I like that matchup as well. But on the same side, you don't think when I think about the U.S. and I think about trouble, I think about Orbelín Pineda and him being more of a crafty number 10, similar to Lozano, that can play in and out of spaces and pull guys in and out of tight spaces and tight moments. And I think that opens up the U.S. But I know that you're looking at Tecatito to be able to do that.
I just want to jump in and say really quick before I want to get to you, Wiso, of course, from the Mexican perspective and where you think the keyest matchups are. But if we go with a Christian Pulisic, who is going to be not as sharp because he doesn't have those minutes lately, and we go with a Joe Scally, who I think could start, but yes, he played against Bayern Munich and he's doing well in the Bundesliga, and I think he'll hold his own. I'm not worried about that. It's more about Mexico is going to have a lot of possession. And what are we doing in those moments? If Pulisic isn't fit enough to really track in the same way, if Scally doesn't wait, I've never played with Miles Robinson before. Am I supposed to step or am I supposed to drop? What are we doing here? These are really important things that happen in a game where all of a sudden you got a Guardado, you got a Herrera, you got these really crafty players that know better and can sense when they can feel that weakness because of their vast amounts of experience. We're going to punish these guys.
But do we think we can't track for 45
we can
minutes?
We can track. Listen, there's a difference between tracking players and actually working together in a collective team shape to put teams in an area where you want to try to actually win the ball collectively. And I think that is where Mexico kills us. If things get out of control, then we get emotional. And when you get emotional, you start to lose your discipline even more. And I worry about that side of it a little bit. And that's where I think the experience of Mexico could hurt us.
But that I'm on the other side saying you guys are players, right? It's going to be to the medical staff. How are you? 90%, 80%, whatever you are, you're going to want to start to make an impact at the beginning, right? Because even you're going to track players, you're going to bring them in at 60th minute, 65th minute, even before. And what can Pulisic do? It's kind of an answer. And then what? Take him to Jamaica, where it's going to be tougher. I think this is the game. Put him in, see what he does at the beginning, and then, assess there.
Look at Wiso,
taking those.
The U.S. men's national team fan.
No, I'm just saying, I'm taking myself out of it, saying, why wouldn't you do that? And for me as a fan, I said this, if I don't see Pulisic and the starting lineup, he's not 100%. He's not a threat coming in at 55, 60th minute.